Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 9th, 2017. My computer does not work. I don't know why. I thought I had figured this out, but there's really no rhyme or reason to how this works. I have no startup procedure that is reliable in any sense of the word. That's too bad. However, we have got things up and running for the time being. Crapshoot as to whether it ever works again. I'm so pleased with the way this new system is working. It's fantastic. Aren't you happy? I'm sorry it has robbed you of 10 minutes of a show that we've already given away 10 minutes on with our station breaks. Why, as a matter of fact, we're nearly at time for a station break now. Not quite, of course. It is 9:13 Eastern Time as I speak to you. We won't break until 9:28 Eastern Time. We'll try and see if we can get Greg to join in at this point and see whether we can get him on the air or whether he has scooted off to work. And everything seems to be working at the moment. Everyone with emergency messages, except for Justice, can pause for the time being. Thank you. I appreciate your help. I'm in no mood to deal with it rationally. Isn't that fantastic? Let's bring Greg on. Maybe he can tell you what's going on in the world. Good morning, Greg. Are you there?
Good morning, David. I am. How about you?
I don't know. It doesn't
You're
matter.
not sure?
It really doesn't make a difference whether I show up for work or not. The computer doesn't want to.
Oh, you don't sound happy today.
I am unhappy.
Okay. Well, let's fix that.
All right.
Let's talk about politics and all the stuff that's happening, and let's see if we can cheer you up with, I don't know, infighting in the Democratic Party between the Medicare for all people and Medicare for what people.
That sounds happy.
Yeah, we could do that. We could look at Trump's declining poll numbers. We did a little bit of that on Monday, but there's always more. We can remind you that today is August 9th.
That is true, too.
On August 9th, 1974, Dear Mr. Secretary, I hereby resign the office of President of the United States. Sincerely, Richard Nixon, 11:35 a.m., noted by Henry Kissinger.
He wanted to do it at 11:30,
that he was writing to.
His computer wasn't working. Okay, I was wondering about which secretary.
Right, and John Dingell tweeted, that was 43 years ago today, concise and to the point. You can even fit it in a tweet, Donald.
So you can. Who would be our secretary this time? I guess Rex Tillerson, but he's on vacation, so I don't know who you would tell it to.
Yeah, I don't know. But, I suppose he would just put it on Twitter and just assume that that's official policy.
Yeah, probably. Okay, well, I would be happy about that if that were to happen. That would cheer me up considerably.
There's a couple of things. Nina Turner basically came out and said, and she's the president of Our Revolution.
Oh,
which
good.
is an offshoot of the Bernie campaign, I guess. In terms of what it evolves to, and keeping pressure on Democrats to stay a little bit left. And before I get to her and the Medicare for All, I thought there was a very interesting piece that was covered in Dave Weigel. And he was substituting for James Hohmann, who happens to be on vacation. So he was doing the Daily 202. That's the area code for Washington.
Right.
They have Power Post and the Washington Post, and they're awfully interesting. Awfully. And this one was Democrats are moving left, and that won't necessarily hurt them in 2018, which is, of course, that's good. And what he writes is, in Chicago on Sunday, this past Sunday, the Democratic Socialists of America, you can find them on Twitter because they have a little rose next to their name, got a chance to break away from the Democratic Party. A resolution laid out all the reasons from the reported 57% of voters who want a third party to the rapid success of the 2016 presidential bid by Senator Bernie Sanders, independent Vermont. Remember, independent, not Democrat, independent, to the laughable unelectability of the Democrats. Representative Tim Ryan, Democrat Ohio, said that the Democratic Party has become a toxic brand and a failed party, the resolution read. Well, he called them the Democratic Party, not the Democrat Party, so obviously he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Oh, right, yes.
The D next to a socialist, a progressive's name, places them at a major disadvantage on Election Day. Why tie our strategy to a sinking ship, said the resolution. That's not what Tim Ryan said. Tim Ryan said that Democratic Party had become a toxic brand and a failed party. But the socialists said, why should socialists have anything to do with the Democrats?
Well, that would be a logical follow-up to his comments. If that was in fact true, I would wonder.
But the resolution failed, and easily so. While the judgment of 697 delegates to a socialist convention might not seem like a major Democratic Party development, it was telling of something that frequently gets lost. Democrats, for whom self-flagellation starts at birth and continues after death, have been moving as steadily left as Republicans moved to the right in 2009 when they last lost power. That story can get lost in the more easily told narrative of Democrats in disarray, which of course the press loves to do.
Yes.
Last week provided plenty of material for that narrative, with Jim Justice converting from a bought Democrat to a solid Republican, which he always was until he decided he wanted to win the West Virginia governor race. And a Quinnipiac poll, otherwise larded with good news for Democrats, found that just 40% of Democrats had heard of their freshly announced platform called The Better Deal. Oh. Which, that's fine, but sometimes this is a little silly. We're nowhere near close to an election, and most normal people really don't pay attention to this kind of stuff. Anyway, but he says there's a large number of problems for Democrats feeding into the other, but all of them reflect the party continuing to move to the left. First of all, the Better Deal, which is being amended week to week, is largely built on the left-wing platform that emerged from the 2016 convention. Democrats now endorse $15 minimum wage, back $1 trillion deficit finance infrastructure spending. They want to create new agencies that could cancel lopsided free trade deals. Building new agencies with targeted missions was a hallmark of the New Deal, David Diane wrote, the sharp left-wing writer David Diane last week in The Nation. Like under FDR, these Better Deal agencies are an admission that the current framework is fatally corrupted, unresponsive to public needs. And they talk about that a little bit. Better Deal, denounced as thin, actually reflected how regulatory godmother Senator Elizabeth Warren and the 15-or-fight Godfather Sanders now steer the party. The new Democratic proposals outside this framework are left-wing too.
That is true.
The continuum of healthcare ideas now ranges from Medicare buy-in favored by Rust Belt Democratic senators to the public option favored by House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi to the single-payer alternative favored by the majority of House Democrats. And that's what I'm going to wind up talking about, I think, for the rest of my segment till our station break. That this hasn't gotten much attention is a function of two things. The party base's demands for more and a media climate in which left-wing policy is seen as insufficiently new and disruptive to be serious. Now, this is just a little side note here. I work for a corporate hospital. And I have otherwise worked in corporate settings before. And one of the fascinating things to me about a corporate setting, among the many fascinating things, is there is never a premium or a reward for doing the right thing too early. As an example, you can decide, I don't know, 27 years ago when I first got into practice, that the best way to get patient loyalty is to take care of them as best you can and treat them as individuals.
Sure, I would think so.
Sounds fun. But if that becomes the new modern branding of hospitals, then you get credit for having made the change from, let's say, now until next year, not for what you did 25 years ago. If you refuse to change, then obviously you're old and hidebound, and you know what I mean. The key here is, have you changed from a couple of years ago? Well, what if I got it right way before then, and I don't really have to change? Oh, well, obviously you're being a dino, and you're not really responsive to the new changes that we want to bring to the system. Well, that's because I was already doing it right. You're not listening. The changes you made from last year to this year that show that you are right with the system the way we want, because that's what we need. We need things that are measurable. We need things that but there isn't that much change because, I already did this 25 years ago.
Yes.
You're not listening. The whole focus is on change.
Yes, that's the hot brand.
That's the thing. You got to do change. If you don't do change, then like you're not really with the system. So what about people who have wanted, universal health care for like years and years and years and years? And all of a sudden, you really must be old fuddy-duddy because, like, you're not with Medicare for All the way we just decided this year that we want. What you wanted 3 years ago and 10 years ago and 20 years ago may be consistent, but it's not new.
I have a solution. If this is a problem at work or anywhere else, anybody else who's having this trouble, you can say
nothing's a problem.
Yeah, you don't have to change your point of view. You can simply come in. And I think the new thing to do is you come in the morning and say, I'm for that policy because Chapo Trap House. And then I think everybody says, oh, he's on it. That guy is cutting edge.
Well, what if you come in and you say, I'm for that policy because Cargo Cult, and then you give a reference?
You'd have to help. Yeah, I don't know. Will that work?
Know that Cargo Cult?
I don't. I keep seeing it referred to, and I don't even know what we're talking about.
I have to send you a reference. It's really a fascinating thing. So back in the 40s, back in World War II, there were these really isolated islands.
Yes.
And sometimes naval aviators would accidentally or sometimes on purpose land there. Mm-hmm. And they brought technology and trinkets and all this sort of stuff that appeared to the natives to be like really incredible.
Okay.
Then they left. And then the natives said, well, we want them back. How can we have them back? I know. We'll build out of wood and bamboo a plane to attract what used to come.
It's good thinking.
And it almost became a religion. Fake air control towers with wooden earphones that you put in, and if you put on the trappings of what you think you want, maybe you'll attract what you want.
I got it.
And that's a cult. It's a cargo cult.
Huh. What a strange.
And so the idea is you're not really putting the substance behind, what you're talking about here. You're putting the trappings only and crossing your fingers and hoping that if you clap hard enough, you'll get what you want.
I think that would work then.
Well, Medicare for All?
Well, I mean, if
you
that
see
was
the
your
analogy
excuse,
here? You see where I'm going with this?
Yes. Okay. So if it was your excuse.
But if you say, like, it's a really good thing and this is what we want, but I'm not doing the homework of putting in the actual policy. I'm not putting in the homework of trying to figure out how much taxes are going to go up, what's going to be about the disruption to the 139 million some odd people who get employer-sponsored insurance who now have to switch. How happy are they going to be about switching? Everybody likes change, remember. I mean, after all, new is good, right? So let's just tell them it's all new. And there's no track record and so on and so forth. And let's see how that goes. The point is you can't just have something without putting the underpinnings of how this is going to work. As a politics thing, Medicare for All is very attractive. As a policy thing, it's not exactly quite there. And so there's a trio of articles, and because of a little bit of the disruption today, I didn't have a chance to plant them all. But I'm gonna, just give them to you so that you have them on the Skype.
Yes,
one we've talked about a long time ago. This is Dave. Remember the Sharp Dave Dayen's article about California single payer.
Yes,
and why it was failing, basically because the proponents didn't go through the process stuff of figuring out with California's arcane budget system how single payer was going to work on top of having to devote a certain percentage of California revenue to other things like education. Mm-hmm. So until you deal with those like little details, it doesn't go anywhere. So the title of his article back at the end of June, California single payer organizers are deceiving their supporters. It's time to stop. Basically saying it's easy. It's not easy. You have to deal with these details. By the way, our station break, is it like 3 minutes to the half hour or on the half hour?
It's not on the half hour. We're about a minute and a half from our break, and then we'll do a 3-minute thing.
That was pretty good, right? I brought it up and
That's right.
timely manner. I'm trying to pay attention to the radio here.
Excellent. I'm trying to find the best way to keep you up to date on it without distracting you while you're in the middle of something.
But the two new articles, which I'll get in before the break, and then we can do the break here, is Paul Krugman writing in the New York Times, what's next for progressives? And we'll deal with this particular article after the break. Mm-hmm. And then there's a third one that was a couple of weeks ago, and that was in the New Republic, I believe, by Cleo Cheng, entitled "Where Are the Single-Payer Wonks?" The political momentum on the left for Medicare for All is gaining steam, but the policy is lagging behind. And so that's the concept that I'll leave you with while we do break.
Okay. Well, we got a couple of seconds here, about 30 seconds before we head out to break, but reminding everyone we'll be breaking for 3 minutes for station identification, which around here, if you're listening to our live stream, of course, means you're listening to Netroots Radio. We won't leave you for that entire...
It's Kagro X, my friend David Waldman, me being Greg Dworkin, and maybe that'll take us right up to the break, huh?
Almost. We're a few seconds out. I get all the inside information about how there's 15 seconds left and such, and so it's easy.
And I don't, so I just make it up.
So you're just doing it blindly, but we'll be right back after this.
Except you and I are still in the air, right?
Yeah, you and I can talk with each other, and we're recording it, and the podcast listeners can tune in and hear our behind-the-scenes chatter about how annoying these breaks are. But we'll get it down pretty quickly. How did you decide on 3 minutes? Well, the 3 minute thing, they required at least 1 minute up in Rochester. And in order to give them the leeway they needed to do their 1 minute thing without having to worry too much about exactly how we sync in and out with them, given the delay, because we're streaming over the internet, we made a 3 minute window during which they can take 1 minute away from a continuing stream. The live stream listeners hear from Netroots Radio a public service announcement and a thing that they recorded to take us in and out of the break, saying, all right, we'll be right back. We're breaking for station identification, Kagro in the morning show, etc. I have the files, but I have to listen to them yet. Yeah.
So here's my suggestion.
Yeah.
We either make it 90 seconds or 2 minutes. I think 3 minutes is a little bit too long, number one. And number two, since they're professionals and we're not, if they need a minute break and we give them 90 seconds, they can use the extra 30 seconds to do whatever they need. The funny thing is, when we're doing it, 15 seconds can seem like an eternity. Okay. Like if you're saying, okay, and thank you so much for listening, and now a commercial break, and then there's 15 seconds of dead time before the actual thing comes.
Yes.
It seems like forever.
Yeah, I'm not certain how it's working out in the two different places, and I know ultimately it may just be an experiment that just doesn't work out, and we can't manage to sync things close enough for terrestrial radio to use the show if they need the station breaks. But we'll have to get a little bit of feedback, and we'll refine this thing and see if we can get it down to 2 minutes and even lower.
I'm not the expert, Justice and the crew are, but I'm just saying that, shortening it from 3 minutes would probably be good, because if you're listening, 3 minutes of, where's the show is a lot.
I know, and it must be killing people. We're about, we're about 35 seconds from the end of our break now. Also, we'll try and see if we can coordinate it better. I'm reluctant to send along the notices to you while you're mid-sentence, because I know when I send you a note, it interrupts the flow of speech as you shift your eyes down to check the note. But that may be better than nothing. All right, we're about 15 seconds away here.
Well, look, the fact is that I interrupt you all the time. The least you can do is interrupt me sometimes.
I guess that's true. It'll probably help.
I'm from New York. I don't mind.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's easy when you're interrupting with voice. It's difficult when it's silent messaging. All right, we're about back.
Okay, so are we back?
Well, this should about bring us back right about now, according to my timing. Yes, right. We never left. Don't cry for us, Argentina. We're back, but we never left you. How about that? Anyone listening in Argentina, you can let us know on the hashtag KITM. I'd love to know.
So let me get back to a couple of articles I wanted to talk about. Let me start with this one, because I've already been reprimanded by a parody account this morning on Twitter, as well as a grammar bot.
Oh, no.
Both of them objected to what I was saying. The grammar bot, because I spelled something wrong.
Fair enough.
The parody account was unhappy with me because I posted the Krugman article in the abbreviated pundit roundup this morning, obviously meaning that Daily Kos and all of us centrists were totally opposed to Medicare for all. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. What we really want is universal health coverage or health care for all.
Okay.
And Medicare for all is one way to do it. Single payer is one way to do it. Medicaid for all is one way to do it. Public option buy-in is one way to do it. Evolution of the Affordable Care Act is one way to do it. A mix of private and public insurances, the way they do overseas, is another way to do it. And so you don't want to get too hung up on the idea. But because our revolution and because I guess people in Congress on the Democratic side have proposed Medicare for all, it's a topic of conversation. So Krugman writes, for me, at least, the attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act appears dead. And that's good, I say. Sabotage by a spiteful Trump administration is still a risk, but there's, gasp, a bipartisan push to limit the damage with Democrats who want to preserve recent gains, allying with Republicans who fear that the public will blame them for declining coverage and rising premiums. Now, I note for the record, I said this a while ago, and I really didn't think that the efforts on the Republicans would succeed. I said that before I went on vacation, and it turned out to be true.
Yes, and it was damn close to not being true.
Well, but you know, this is one of those cases where one vote actually looks like a lot less than what it really was. If it weren't for McCain, there would have been other people that would have done different. It's just that they were happy to have him do it because they had to go back and talk to the constituents, and they don't really want to do that. That's why they don't like to do town meetings anymore. It was that Dave Bratt from Virginia said, these town meetings, I just go there and like people yell at me for 90 minutes. Well, that's because what you're doing is wrong.
Oh, okay. Well,
nobody told me that part.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
what am I
back to
do
Krugman.
now?
This represents a huge victory for progressives. Remember, it's part of this whole thing about the Democratic Party shifting left, and that's not good enough for some people, who did a startlingly good job of marshaling facts, mobilizing public opinion, and pressuring politicians to stand their ground. We did all of that. Indivisible, the resistance, all of that mattered. But where do they go from here? If Democrats regain control of Congress and the White House, and by the way, that's iffy, the White House not till 2020, in 2018, regaining control of Congress with the gerrymandering and all the other stuff that was done in 2010 makes it very, very difficult to do. What will they do with the opportunity? Well, some progressives, by and large people who supported Bernie Sanders in the primaries, are already trying to revive one of his signature proposals, expanding Medicare to cover everyone.
All right.
And I have to say, the fact that it is a Bernie Sanders proposal is one of the things that's making this contentious. That's me, Krugman. Because if you have issues with it, you must have issues with Bernie, people say. No, it's the policy. It's got nothing to do with Bernie or anybody else. And back to Krugman. Some even want to make support for single payer a litmus test for Democratic candidates. So time for a little pushback. A commitment to universal health coverage, bringing people currently falling through Obamacare's cracks, should definitely be a litmus test. But single payer, while it has many virtues, isn't the only way to get there. It will be much harder politically than its advocates acknowledge, and there are more important priorities. To cut to the chase, he thinks preserving the safety net is much more important. The key point to understand about universal coverage is that we know a lot about what it takes because every other wealthy country has it. How do they do it? Lots of different ways. And then he talks about the differences between the British system and the Dutch system. Meanwhile, the political logic that led to Obamacare rather than Medicare for all still applies. It's not just about paying off the insurance industry, although getting insurance to buy into health reform wasn't foolish, and arguably helped save the Affordable Care Act. At a crucial moment, America's health insurance plans, the industry lobbying organization, and Blue Cross Blue Shield intervened to denounce Republican plans. A far more important consideration is minimizing disruption to the 156 million people who currently get insurance through their employers and are largely satisfied with the coverage. This is a hugely important point. Moving to single payer would mean taking away the coverage and imposing new taxes. To make it fly politically, you would have to convince most of those people, both that they would save more in premiums than they pay in additional taxes, and that their new coverage would be just as good as the old coverage. Now, that might be true, but it would be one heck of a hard sell.
That is true, considering, the thing to keep in mind is that people don't always respond to logic and facts the way you think they will, and sometimes they don't think they're facts. Yeah.
So absolutely right. Is this really where progressives want to spend their political capital, says Krugman? What would I do instead, he says? I'd enhance the Affordable Care Act, not replace it, although I would strongly support reintroducing some form of public option, a way to people to buy into public insurance, that could eventually lead to single payer. Meanwhile, progressives should move beyond health care and focus on other holes in the U.S. safety net, which, by the way, Trump is proposing making bigger. That's part of the agenda. That's not through Congress. That's a regulatory stuff.
Okay.
So the point he's making really is that it's really disruptive to bring change, and that's fine, but you have to be prepared for it if, in fact, that's what you're going to do. And if you're not prepared for it, my point, then, stop using it as a slogan. Medicare for all is a slogan like Make America Great Again. It's completely hollow unless you know what the actual policy is. That sounds harsh. I'm sorry, but it's true. And so, if you say, well, you're not Medicare for all, therefore you're a centrist, you're not really a Democrat, you're a blue dog, you're this, that, all the other invective I was getting on Twitter the last couple of days. I don't pay any of that stuff. I have been for universal health care for 20 years. Just because it's not the new thing doesn't necessarily mean that what we are trying to do is wrong. And if you don't have the homework behind, the slogan, it ain't good enough. And here's another piece, Cleo Chang, August of 2017, so it's not that old, August 3rd. Where are the single-payer wonks? The political momentum on the left for Medicare for all is gaining steam, but the policy is lagging behind. We've seen this dynamic play out in real time in California. We talked about that, where the country's most promising single-payer bill floundered on the details of the legislation. And on a national level, there's little clarity around an actual plan with comprehensive steps to genuine universal coverage. For a party that prides itself on being the country's only rational empirical party, where are the Democrats' famed wonks on single-payer? The failure to sketch out a plan speaks less to the pie-eyed idealism of activists than to the lack of an existing policy infrastructure in support of single-payer. Most evident in the think tank class, large policy shops like Brookings and Center for American Progress have focused instead on criticizing Republican healthcare efforts or pushing for bipartisan reform options. And I would add, by the way, that's all important because, for example, you got to fix what's going on right now with people. And then smaller and more explicitly progressive think tanks, such as the Economic Policy Institute, Demos, Roosevelt Institute, are stacked with left-leaning scholars on subjects like minimum wage, voting rights, antitrust policy. Again, I would add, all important, but are less in the business of churning out policy proposals for legislators, especially when it comes to health care. So, in other words, we don't have an ALEC. We don't have a group of people who are putting, off-the-shelf ready policies to legislators in states or for Democrats in Congress that just say, here, this is what you do and this is where we're going. Yeah. And without that background, without that detailed, clear-eyed view of how you get from here to there, it's very difficult to push the policy. Otherwise, it just rings hollow.
Yeah, it does pose a problem. We actually do there is allegedly an organization that's meant to serve as a left-leaning ALEC. It's just not nearly as popular, not as well funded, not as well known. Its convention's not nearly as well attended. But yeah, there's work to be done there. We might as well not have it at this point, probably. If we're not going to fund it, promote it, use it the same way they use ALEC.
Mm-hmm. Now here's a analogy.
All right.
Between the Republican efforts to repeal Obamacare and pushing for single payer. And the author here is using the Physicians for a National Health Program, PNHP, an organization that pushes for single payer. They've been at the forefront of the issue. The bulk of the think tank world, however, has been focused on defending the Affordable Care Act. And so, some of us are just being practical about what we have right now. Adam Gaffney, an instructor at Harvard Medical School and board member of PNHP, told the New Republic, in other words, he was interviewed for this article, when something seems very far away, and here's the analogy with trying to overturn Obamacare. When something seems very far away, the need for kind of detailed policy work sometimes seems less. But now that single payer is no longer an idea on the fringe, says the author, The actual mechanics have to be in place to maintain its credibility. Bernie's going to come out with a bill, and I want it to be as strong as possible. Vijay Das, senior campaign strategist at Demos, told me, I want it to live up to scrutiny of the right and the left. And that means it's got to have depth to it. It's got to be able to work. It can't just be a token bill, which, you can explain. Sometimes Congress does that because they want to make a point, not because they want it to be actual policy.
Right. Or sometimes they go for things they don't want to be policy.
Yeah, like skinny bills.
Last week. Okay. Yeah, well, very true, and there's work cut out for people, but this is the kind of work that's supposed to be going on in the background all the time, and I think that, it might be a signal that we're moving even faster to the left than single-payer advocates really expected us to be moving.
Right.
And it may well be that they're
and that's a good thing, not a bad
pressure.
thing. It's a feature, not a bug, but it does mean that you have to recognize the holes there and shore them up. Yeah,
well, we have the right people. We just have to make sure that they've got a place to work, and a goal, and they're working together. And I'm not even certain, even if we were to fund these things extravagantly, if they would be working together.
Right. So this article makes one further point, which I think is worth stressing, because it's going to come up in other issues as well. This weakness in left-leaning policy work goes beyond single-payer. Broadly speaking, I think left politics needs more detailed, thorough, and rigorous policy work, Gaffney says. We absolutely need better and more policy on the left. While the Heritage Foundation and the Center for American Progress are seen as policy feeders for right-wing and center-left politicians, respectively, there's no such equivalent for the more progressive space. Jacob Hacker, a political scientist at Yale, points out that there are many academics doing the work outside of the think tank sphere, but as scholars, they're often removed from late in the pipeline policy development that's essential for politicians and policymakers. In other words, the details. True. There's a problem in terms of progressive policy development, but it's not a problem of there being an absence. The problem is where it's coming from and what its character is. That is to say, is it ready, to sit down and work out little details that make the difference between passing something and having it not get enough votes?
Yes. Well, there also, by the way, once again, another continuing themes, used to be such an apparatus, and it was the Democratic Study Group, and it was internal to the House itself and made up of staffers and members, funded by staffers and members that would do this kind of policy research ahead of time and could direct the Democratic caucus from an explicitly progressive standpoint. I guess one of the few lasting successes of the Newt Gingrich revolution of 1994 was its abolition and defunding and the disbursement of its assets, both monetary and scholarly.
Right. Now, they also contrast the success of something like the Koch brothers network. The author here says part of the problem may stem from the Democratic Party's technocratic bent. No one would accuse Democrats of lacking the ability to churn out detailed and complex policy work. See Hillary Clinton. But all right. This kind of in-the-weeds work is often removed from the long-term vision that comes with grassroots mobilizing. Liberal think tanks often work in the realm of political possibility rather than setting ideological goals. And this means, with the sudden burst of energy on the left for more far-reaching policies, democratic politics has left much of the think tank world scrambling to keep up. Contrast this with right-wing think tanks, many of which are couched within a larger Koch network that spent the last few decades waging a war of ideas. So basically they have a policy, but they also have another arm which is pushing the politics. And we have one or the other. They're divorced from each other. They often don't mesh, and they're often not at the same stage. So we're at a disadvantage when it comes to that. Especially because we actually care about getting it right.
Yes. That is a troublesome...
well, it makes it harder to do.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's hard to do real things versus simply shout slogans. That's true for everyone, right or left.
Right. And the article just goes on to talk about the fact that it's a lot to do with money, and the rich, very, very rich tend to lean right, so we don't have the same kind of resources. But the fact of the matter is, when you're looking at policy, there is that hole, and that is what I wanted to bring to your show and to your listeners today in regard to the Medicare for All discussion. It isn't because we're all blue dogs and we really want to go back to fee-for-service, and if you don't have insurance, too bad for you. It's because it needs to be done right, and the actual details on how to do it right are sort of like not there. And if they're not there, do you really want to be pushing the policy? And there are people like Nina Turner who said absolutely, because like it's yes. And some of us say that's fine, but that's not quite good enough.
Yeah, well, there'll be a difference of opinion.
Because it's going to affect all of these people, and what happens to them if you push a policy that wasn't ready for prime time yet?
Yeah, I mean, that does raise that question. Suppose you have a sudden and overwhelming and maybe unexplained victory and an opportunity to implement a program, and you do so.
Then you're the Republicans trying to repeal Obamacare without a program, and who wants to be there?
Or you are back in October of whatever year it was and launching it via a website that doesn't work, and everybody mistakes that for the program itself not working. And that lasts forever because, in fact, the program underlying it isn't ready, as opposed to just being a technical glitch.
Exactly right. So that's the point I was trying to make. I hope I tried to do it in a semi-coherent fashion. I'm just about done with this segment, but before I leave you, there's a completely different article I want to leave you with. Of course, we have the Pundit Roundup today, and there's a lot of good stuff there if you want to go take a look. But Christian Schneider, who is an opinion columnist for USA Today, happens to be a never-Trumper and a conservative, has a really fascinating article today called "Donald Trump has a Sickening Fetish for Cruelty." I just thought you might enjoy it.
Is that in the roundup?
It is. It's the last one in the roundup, but I also put it in the...
excellent.
It's at your Skype list there, second to last one.
Oh, okay.
Now, when I said I'd enjoy it, I didn't, it has a sickening fetish for cruelty. I didn't mean you'd enjoy the sickening. I didn't mean you'd enjoy the fetish, and I didn't mean you'd enjoy the cruelty. I just thought you'd enjoy the entire article.
Yeah, okay. As a totality, it makes sense. I enjoy the fact that someone is saying he's sickening.
How not that you like get off on the sickening stuff. Anyway, but let's not go there. This is like, public radio. And this is Greg Dworkin speaking to my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning. Thanks so much for listening, folks. We'll go through the technical glitches and figure it out. My one suggestion is shorten the break from 3 minutes to less than 3 minutes.
All right. Well, we'll certainly be working on
90
that.
seconds, 120 seconds, something like that.
I'm for shortening these things, although I think originally there was some thinking, well, maybe you could use 3 minutes to get some things done or organize your thoughts, but you know what?
Yeah, coffee, making breakfast, and so on and so forth. But I think it's a little bit too long. We could use the time, no question. And I can let Abby out and get her to stop barking. I can take the phone out of the room that I forgot to do in case it goes off.
We could nonetheless, another radio show.
I know, but I think it's a little bit too long.
That's the problem. I feel like it is, and I'm sitting around waiting for the thing to come back. So we'll be working on it. We'll talk to Rochester. We got to get some feedback from them about can we make that work? Can you get your 1 minute into a 2 minute window? Yes.
And I just want your listeners to know we're not abandoning them, and we're working on that aspect of it. It's a work in progress.
Although, if I could abandon them and go to like a tropical paradise, I might think about that. But I would.
Yeah, you can go study cargo cults. You know what? I'm gonna find a good reference for you and leave you that too, because it's a really fascinating thing.
I also now have to read about clutch cargo, which I also never really understood what people were talking. Is that does it take its name from that cartoon? Are you aware of it?
No.
Justice knows about it. He sent me a reference to it. I've seen it before, and it comes up all the time. I'm going to have to read up on it because I'm missing half the jokes people are sending around.
All right, here we go. I'm sending you something from Scientific American called 50 Years Ago, Cargo Cults of Melanesia. Throughout Melanesia, primitive men await a black messiah who will bring them a largesse of cargo, European goods. These cults typify the impact of Christendom on pre-modern society.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that is something. I didn't even know Melania Trump had islands. Is that what we're talking about? Oh, Melanesia. Yeah. No, that's okay. I got you. Melanesia. Well, all right. I'll get up to speed on these things. I don't know what good it'll do us, but what harm could it do? That's the way to look.
Here's a short one. This is really fascinating here. During World War II, the island of Tanna, T-A-N-N-A, in Vanuatu had its first glimpse of such wealth when American GIs came to work at the military base on a nearby island. Eager to disconnect from European colonization and empowered by seeing black American soldiers preside over the cargo, new religions began to emerge. The most fascinating is the John Frum movement. Members worship an American serviceman named John Frum, said to have originated with a soldier identifying himself, John from America.
All right.
Annual celebrations are held on February 15th, John Frum Day. A ceremonial army of men will paint USA on their chests and perform a hybrid of a military drill and custom dances with wooden guns. They raised the American flag, built World War II planes out of grass, and built a makeshift landing strip, all with the expectation John Frum will return with more cargo. I'll send you that one too. It's just really interesting. And it's got some great pictures, which you folks on the radio can't see, but David will.
Wow. No less logical than any other of your basic religions in many ways.
Yeah, but so is Medicare for all a cargo cult? Is it all like the grass picture of the ship, but not really the depth behind it? I don't want it to be.
I don't know. There really is Medicare though, but so that's true. But there really was a plane. Huh. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, and the last thing I sent you, just and maybe you can put this in the roundup, or Scott Anderson can, is just a Google search of cargo cult for images, and you see some of the grass planes made and the grass radar bowls made. They're just fascinating in terms of what people put together.
It is pretty fascinating. How do they even know about? I guess
I don't know.
I mean, how do they know about the control towers and the radars? Is that because there was a base
because there was an actual base in a nearby island that they were aware of.
Yeah, and I guess nobody bothered to explain to them
how it worked.
Well, that is fascinating, and at least I know what the reference is.
Yeah. So I'm talking to my friend David Frum, who's from Daily Kos.
there is a David Frum. Don't confuse us.
Yeah.
Maybe there isn't. I don't know.
Maybe there isn't. You never know.
He's just a guy. He's a literal straw man.
To practice this weird religion that he just never really wanted to tell us about in person.
It'll explain an awful lot.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave you. You got some time to kill between now and the station break, so take care.
Will do.
Thank
you.
I will be back tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks very much, Greg. Hope we'll be back tomorrow, too. Not only just because we have our own malfunctions to deal with, but because there's still the chance, of course, that Donald Trump could nuke everybody, including probably some of these practitioners of the cargo cults could get themselves in trouble, too, depending on how far and wide the North Koreans eventually decide to sow fire and destruction. We didn't even get to that. And how much time do we even really want to spend on something as depressing as that? Anything more depressing than our equipment not functioning as intended in the morning? It would have to be the fact that Donald Trump is making nuclear war threats from God knows where at his golf course while tweeting his anger. Although the original threats came in the form of, they were actual speech. He wasn't tweeting them. People were tweeting his comments, and that's how they reached Twitter. But just to give ourselves a quick backgrounder on where all that stood and how it all happened. Remember that yesterday we were supposed to get a major briefing about opioids, and that sort of came through. Remember, he had seen a story in the morning on Fox and Friends about opioids, retweeted it, and then announced that he was going to have a major briefing on it at 3 p.m. I don't know how well he did at getting it done on time. I did see a tweet sent around yesterday that they had spelled opioids wrong on the written materials accompanying the briefing, but the upshot of that appeared to be that he was announcing that the people he had hired to inform him and report to him on the opioid crisis had recommended to him that someone be hired to report to him and inform him about the opioid crisis going forward. And that was the major briefing. That's solely it. And then, of course, he ad-libbed it a little bit, or seemed to ad-lib. If it was written out ahead of time, they've got some serious problems with their policy people. Essentially, he said the way to try and solve the opioid crisis, if we could only just get to people and get them not to be on opioids, that would be really a big help, a huge step towards curing the opioid problem. If we could get to people before they began taking opioids and resorting to opioid drugs, that would be even better. You could tell them, if we could speak to the youth of today and tell them, really bad for you, not good, then they wouldn't take the opioids and you wouldn't have a problem in the first place. And I'm paraphrasing here, but only barely. He essentially was, a lot of people pointed out that this is just reiterating the old just say no line from the Reagan years. And it would likely meet with about as much success. But What was really interesting was this was the upshot of what in the morning was announced to be a major briefing. But of course, his people knew nothing about that. And, they couldn't really have prepared a major briefing for him that he would have understood, even if they had advance notice of it. But the fact that it was just sprung on them in the morning via tweet pretty much ensured that they weren't going to be able to do anything with it. And no surprise, they in fact were not able to do anything with it. But it only occupied his attention for a brief moment, and I am not clear on how the transition happened, but at some point thereafter, he instead launched into an angry tirade about North Korea, threatening them with fire and fury and destruction such as the world has never seen. And, you know what? I'm not sure exactly how the transition happened, but I do have an interesting article, if it made it all the way to Pocket, that explains that a transition did happen. And he then, pretty much everybody else was occupied all afternoon thereafter with the threat of nuclear war with North Korea and North Korea's response that they might, in fact, threaten Guam with a nuclear missile. That makes a little bit more sense than you might imagine, but probably many of you already know that Guam hosts a very major military base for the United States, and it's a serious threat. Even if that wasn't there, of course, why nuke anybody? I say, least of all Guam. We'll be right back after this break. So I believe we should be back now from the second of our two breaks. Hopefully everything working well. We'll certainly give some consideration to shortening these things. Really have to check in with Rochester to see whether or not we can narrow that window, perhaps to 2 minutes, perhaps to a minute and a half, and see if we can get those signal handshakes working with enough precision that they can get the 1 minute and 3 seconds, I think is what they actually need in order to make things work, out of a 90-second break, or whether that's shaving things too close. Anyway, we'll find out. By way of background, when we left off before the break, we were talking about how we transitioned from the major briefing on opioids to almost nuclear war, or damn close to it, perhaps as close as we've been to it for some time. Alex Horton tries to put together the background of how it came to be that North Korea chose Guam as a possible target in the Washington Post. Why North Korea threatened Guam, the tiny U.S. territory, here's the answer, with big military power. That's the issue. North Korea, it says here, is reviewing plans to strike U.S. military targets in Guam. And I must apologize. I'm very sorry, Guam. We don't treat you all that well as it is. We give you the opportunity to vote in the presidential elections, yes, and you send us a delegate to Congress. That is fantastic. I am sure you're happy about that. But I figure you probably thought you were going to continue on your merry way, enjoying the benefits of territorial status with the United States, but without having to face major threats of nuclear annihilation. Although perhaps you were more realistic about it than I imagined, knowing well, as you have, that we have a major military facility there, and that's going to carry certain risks along with it. But you probably thought, well, by the time they get around to getting the strategic bomber group on Guam with nuclear munitions, we're probably talking about a worldwide wipeout anyway, so we're perhaps no worse off than we would have been otherwise, despite the fact that you might think that if there's any way to survive any kind of nuclear conflict, it might be on remote islands in the middle of the ocean. But I guess if you're hosting a military base, that's probably right out early on. North Korea, though, that's a new player, and you probably didn't expect to be target one in all this. And, I apologize for bringing you to that portion, but it's not, I didn't do it. And probably, I wonder how did Trump do in Guam? I should have asked Greg when we had him on. I bet not all that well. I don't think you knew what you were in for, but you probably weren't interested in buying the brand anyway. North Korea, we are told, is reviewing plans to strike U.S. military targets in Guam with its medium-range ballistic missiles to create enveloping fire, according to state media. Basically, of course, it's a target that's close enough to Korea that they think they can reliably reach it and is of tremendous strategic value to the United States, not just because it's a big military base, but because it's a big military base from which we are, on which we rely in order to be able to project our power and launch attacks really pretty much anywhere from Central to Far Eastern Asia, I would think. And it would pose a direct threat to North Korea if we were to engage in a conflict that required the deployment of strategic bombers. They might likely come from there. And we hear a lot about different bases in the Pacific that do project American power into the region, and Guam's one of them. And guess what? The North Koreans heard about it. The message came hours after President Trump warned North Korea that it will be met with fire and fury and, frankly, power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. And, of course, that was all given when the Trump accent, but we skipped it here. If the country does not stop threatening the United States. So fire and fury and, frankly, power, the likes of which the world has never seen before. Where did that come from? We'll get to that in just a minute. The threats follow a unanimous vote by the UN Security Council to impose strict new sanctions on North Korea. In days gone by, you might, in fact, now be seeing a United Nations Security Council resolution, which would ultimately fail because, of course, we hold veto power there, probably condemning the language of the President of the United States and escalating tensions there with his foolish comments. But nevertheless, it would never have gotten through at any time, today or in the past. To these days, they probably know we'll just not waste our time with that one, move on to something else. North Korea's state media have often warned of strikes against the United States, but the threats are usually vague and do not typically include targets this specific, the Wall Street Journal said. That Kim Jong-un is eyeing Guam, the sovereign U.S. territory with a strategic airfield and naval station, is no surprise to the 160,000 Guamanians of the island. I figured it was probably no surprise to them. They were probably a lot more realistic in their thinking about their risks than I have been thousands of miles away from Guam. But at least we learned what to call them. Guamanians. That's worth the price of admission right there. Every time there's some saber rattling in that part of the world, Guam is always part of the occasion, said Robert F. Underwood, the president of the University of Guam and the island's former delegate to the House of Representatives. When you're from Guam and live on Guam, it's disconcerting but not unusual, Underwood told the Washington Post. That answers that. The governor of Guam, Eddie Baza Calvo, posted an address early Wednesday morning on YouTube telling island residents not to worry. That's nice. I know we woke up to media reports of North Korea's talk of revenge on the United States and this so-called newfound technology that allows them to target Guam, the governor said. I'm working with Homeland Security, the Rear Admiral, and the United States to ensure our safety. And I want to reassure the people of Guam there currently is no threat to our island or the Marianas. Calvo said there is no change in the threat level resulting from North Korea events, and that there are several levels of defense, all strategically placed to protect our island and our nation. Noting that Guam is American soil, thank you for reminding us of that, and that an attack or threat on Guam is an attack or threat on the United States, Calvo said he had reached out to the White House and that American officials have assured him that the island, quote, will be defended, unlike, for instance, perhaps NATO, which also considers an attack on NATO territory to be an attack on all NATO members, except when Donald Trump is in the White House or absent from the White House, as may be the case, in which case the answer is, I don't know. And to be perfectly frank, I am not, it's actually a very interesting question, and I saw a lot of people asking it yesterday on Twitter. I am not at all sure that Trump's base considers an attack on Guam to be an attack on the United States. I think for purposes of cheerleading for war, they would be perfectly happy to do so. I think, though, if they felt like they were personally threatened in such a war, that a lot of them would probably revert to who cares about Guam position. That's thousands of miles away. That isn't happening here in Kentucky or West Virginia or Alabama or wherever they might be. They might be in Vermont or New York. There are certainly voters there. I know about that. But I'm not positive that they would be all that firm in their backing of the Guamanians. They probably, like me, before today, had no idea even what to call them. Well, okay. I'd like to reassure the people of Guam, you Guamanians. Do we have any Guam listeners? Again, chime in on that KITM hashtag if I can get over to Twitter and take a look. I'm still waiting to find out whether there's anybody in Argentina listening. Anyway, with that said, that is that Guam is American soil, I want to ensure that we are prepared for any eventuality, Calvo said, adding that he is convening a group to discuss the state of readiness of our military and our local first responders. May God bless the people of Guam, and may God bless the United States of America, he concluded. I don't know if he said it quite that way, but it's fun to imagine that he did. At about 4,000 miles west of Hawaii, and 2,200 miles southeast of North Korea, Guam is on the edge of U.S. power in the Pacific. Its combined Navy and Air Force installation, Joint Region Marianas, is the home port for nuclear submarines, a contingent of special operations forces, and the launching point of flights for strategic bombers conducting rotational flights over Japanese territories and in the Korean peninsula. Guam has been a strategic linchpin since Spain relinquished control to the U.S. Navy following the Spanish-American War in 1898. That's a long time. Japanese forces sped to the island following the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941 and captured it, subjecting its people to violence that some historians estimate to have killed 10% of its population. The island just celebrated its 73rd Liberation Day, commemorating the start of the U.S.-led effort to liberate Guam on July 10, 1944, Underwood said. Now, the island paradise relies on tourism and military activity to buoy its economy, which is marked by high unemployment. There have been recent efforts to grant Guam more control over its government, including support from the United Nations. Guamanians cannot vote for president in the United States. Is that right? I thought that they had... I guess they vote with Democrats abroad. I thought that they may have electoral votes in a pot with various other territories, but I guess I've got that wrong. I do note that they do at least have representation in the House of Representatives. That's probably what fooled me here. Guamanians cannot vote for president in the U.S., so really sorry about that one. But they do vote for party delegates in primaries and have a non-voting delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. That's what it is. There's primaries in Guam, and they send delegates to the national conventions. Interesting that we even, I guess they might want to have some participation in that process, even if they can't vote for president. I guess you take what you can get, and I wonder, are they interested in having more? I don't know. It's not in this article, so I'll never find out. Unless Chris Arnade goes to Guam and finds out for me. He'd probably be up for it. Robert E. Kelly, an expert on North Korea at Pusan National University in South Korea, said the North Koreans always respond to threats with the most outlandish rhetoric, but that Pyongyang also knows that attacking the United States would be suicidal. It's just a question of whether or not they're afraid of things that are suicidal. They're not apocalyptic ideologues like Osama bin Laden, willing to risk everything on some suicide gamble, Kelly said. By the way, how interesting is that? That the expert on North Korea at this South Korean university is an American. Is there no South Korean more expert on North Korea than this imported American? I mean, I'm sure that our American experts on both North and South Korea are genuine and well-educated and know exactly what they're talking about. I'm willing to concede that they certainly know much more than I do. But isn't that doesn't strike anybody as odd? Or maybe he's the one with the best English skills and, therefore the one best suited to give us that comment. But you would think that South Korea would be fairly teeming with North Korea experts, with at least by comparison to us here in the United States. That would be my guess. But again, maybe none of them were available for comment. They were digging bomb shelters. North Korea has warned of strikes against the United States before. Of course, last August, the country's foreign ministry said that all U.S. military bases in the Pacific would, quote, face ruin in the face of all-out and substantial attack, according to the Associated Press. This followed a 2013 warning that Kim Jong-un had ordered his military to prepare plans to attack U.S. bases in Guam, Hawaii, South Korea, and the continental United States. Guam's growing strategic importance is due to its sovereign status, Underwood said. The United States must get clearance from ally nations like South Korea and Japan to build up its military hardware in the event of defense escalations, which can be a lengthy process. But Guam has been used to project power immediately, Underwood said. The island is also home to a terminal high-altitude area defense missile defense battery. I don't know how many defenses needed to be in that sentence, but it's what it says, which targets ballistic missiles. That is, the presence of the THAAD systems in South Korea also have drawn consternation from Pyongyang and Beijing, which view the defensive system as an escalating presence. Does Guam have the THAAD missile system? Remember which one that was, by the way? That was the one that Jared Kushner said he had cut the bazillion-dollar deal to sell to the Saudis the other day, and then it turned out that there was no deal and there was really not even any paperwork on it. Just another one of those stupid things about which the Trump administration was lying or exaggerating for no particular strategic reason. A pair of B-1B Lancer bombers arrived in Guam from South Dakota this week to fly with South Korean and Japanese counterparts. That mission follows an operation over the Korean peninsula in late July in which the warplanes were scrambled from Guam as a response to North Korea's second test of an intercontinental ballistic missile that experts said could have reached as far as New York. That's quite a missile. It was unclear Tuesday whether the Pentagon had elevated the readiness posture of its Guam-based fleet of ships and planes following the threat from North Korea. We always maintain a high state of readiness and have the capabilities, to counter any threat, to include those from North Korea. Johnny Michael, a spokesperson for the Defense Secretary, Jim Mattis, said in a statement to the Post. The numerous installations on Guam host about 6,000 troops, a number that's growing as the United States seeks to rebalance its forces in the Pacific amid a growing reach from China's military and North Korea's increasingly sophisticated nuclear program. In 2014, then Deputy Defense Secretary Bob Work said 60% of the Navy and 60% of the combat air forces would be located in the region. Guam has always been a central part of our plans, certainly a central part of the Navy's plans, but now a central part of the entire Department of Defense's plans, he said at the time. That leaves an island of U.S. citizens watching the news closely as posturing escalates on either side of the Pacific. Representative Madeline Z. Bordallo, the island's congresswoman, said in a statement Wednesday that North Korea's most recent threat to target Guam is dangerous and it further highlights tensions in our region. Is she a full-blown representative as opposed to a delegate? Guam? I guess that's the case. Otherwise, they would have styled her such. It's an interesting political situation we've left them with there. I have to clear it up between that and the way we treat various other territories. Underwood pointed out that most of the time the overheated rhetoric comes from North Korea. This time it's coming from the United States side. That is a little troublesome, isn't it? Guamanians share two common sentiments about their role in foreign policy, Underwood said. Media reports focus on the importance of military installations, making locals feel like they're bit players on a large stage, he said. Others would rather shed the crosshairs. People say, I hate being a target. We're the tip of the spear. Why can't we be another part of the spear? Underwood said. Yeah, I can sympathize with that. But Guam also has a proud tradition of supplying U.S. troops with a disproportionate number of recruits coming from there and American Samoa, Underwood said. By the way, just to clarify, not supplying American troops like with food, but supplying the troops themselves. Disproportionate numbers of recruits coming from Guam and American Samoa. Major employer, of course. 18 Guamanian troops were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, pointing to an outsized sacrifice for a territory with a population smaller than Eugene, Oregon. We have more skin and more land in the game, Underwood said. How do you like that? For those who are saying, to hell with that, I don't care about Guam, if that's, I don't think anybody in our audience is saying that, but if that's actually true about anybody anywhere, that would be a pretty good answer. But that would be a logical answer, and it might not work with them. They might not give a damn one way or the other. It's entirely possible. Now, just quickly before we head into our next break, I think we can squeeze this one in. Daniel Dale, as always, doing fantastic reporting as a reporter for the Toronto Star, based here in Washington. He keeps, I think, one of the...
North Korea,
oops, my goodness, extra video. Thanks.
Make any more threats.
I guess we'll ask that Daniel Dale not include that in their posts, but all right. Well, we had 38 seconds of angry video and audio from Donald Trump. Maybe we ought to roll that just to give you some sense of how ridiculous he sounded when he was leveling his own threats. This, of course, Trump speaking from Bedminster, New Jersey, not the White House, during this crisis. Might as well let's roll that and hear what he had to say and how he said it.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Thank you.
Now, that's very interesting. We'll roll it out to the end here. There's not much else in the way of comment. But what's really fascinating about it, well, you notice that he repeated it twice there, which, if it had been a debate and had Marco Rubio done it, he would have had Chris Christie on his back quite, almost immediately for being a robot, incapable of doing anything but repeating talking points. And to that point, Daniel Dale noticed something too. I noticed it when I went looking for, hey, whatever happened to that opioids thing? And I found an article about what happened, and it was pretty ridiculous. I don't even know if it was important enough at the time to stick in pocket to report on, but I noticed this too. Let's let Daniel Dale tell the story. His thoughts are a little more organized than this. In 2012, how does this come into it? Okay. In 2012, when Donald Trump was a celebrity businessman, he wrote on Twitter, "Price of corn has jumped over 50%. This will cause a jump in food prices, perhaps beyond what we've ever seen." So he certainly has that penchant for that kind of hyperbole. 4 years later, when he was running for president, he told the New York Times that China was building in the South China Sea a military fortress, the likes of which perhaps the world has not seen. The expression popped out of his mouth again after he won the election. In December, Trump told supporters that they had created a grassroots movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. And there it was again, when Trump was ad-libbing about the opioid addiction crisis on Tuesday afternoon. That's where I saw it. He claimed that he was very, very strong on our southern border. And I would say the likes of which this country certainly has never seen. Until that point, the president's pet phrase was unremarkable. It was mere hyperbole, mere Trump. This was a man who never used big when huge could do. He says bigly, of course, but he pretends that's bigly. Anyway, this was just how the man spoke. It's disconcerting. It's perhaps evidence of, mental difficulties, but okay. That's how he spoke. And then, minutes after his remarks on opioids, the phrase suddenly became a threat of nuclear war. I still don't know how that transition went. I think that was all at the same table. A reporter asked him, that must be it, if he had any response to the news revealed by the Washington Post on Tuesday that U.S. intelligence believes North Korea has successfully miniaturized a nuclear warhead. And then we hear what we heard in the tape. North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. Trump responded, stern, at his golf club in New Jersey. That's the place to be stern, by the way. He, yada, yada, very threatening beyond a normal state. But then again, this is not normal. And as I said, because I can't think of anything else, they will be met with fire and fury. And frankly, power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Without the like the world has never seen, Trump's remarks about fire and fury could conceivably have been taken to mean any kind of military strike. With like the world has never seen, the comments are an unmistakable threat of nuclear annihilation. Of course, on the other hand, they have seen it. We have used nuclear weapons to annihilate people before, and really not all that far away. Why, always, poor Asia, always taking the brunt of this. Well, we haven't done it yet. It is possible that Trump intended to make just such a nuclear threat. He has, after all, promised to eradicate North Korea's nuclear threat one way or the other. But it is also possible the president bumbled into the threat because he did not understand the ramifications of a favorite phrase he has in his head. I'm guessing that this talking point didn't come through the rigorous interagency process, tweeted Dan Pfeiffer, communications director in the Obama administration. Kim Jong-un is now confronted with the dilemma that has vexed American voters and lawmakers alike, whether or not to take Trump literally. I don't pay much attention anymore to what the president says because there's no point in it, Senator John McCain told an Arizona radio station while criticizing Trump's comments. It's not terrible what he said, but it's kind of the classic Trump in that he overstates things. Experts believe Kim is rational, not mad, and that he wants to avoid nuclear war, but they have long feared that Kim might be provoked by loose Trump language into miscalculating, launching a strike because he thought Trump meant precisely what he said. I don't think Trump is brave enough to start a war with the North Koreans, but he's dumb enough to talk like he might. And the fear I have is he'll say something that the North Koreans will interpret as a sign that an attack is coming, and they'll overreact. Jeffrey Lewis, director of the East Asia Non-Proliferation Program at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, told the Star in April. These titles, they're killing me. As usual, there is an old Trump tweet that can be read as foretelling the current situation. Be prepared. There is a small chance that our horrendous leadership could unknowingly lead us into World War III, he wrote in 2013. Wow. Well, no surprise there. There's a tweet for every single occasion. And amazingly, another one discovered even for the threat of nuclear war and worldwide annihilation. Huh. Really. I mean, it's like he's an idiot time traveler. We've been over that before. Meanwhile, by the way, Rex Everything Tillerson says nothing's going on. There is no problem. Everybody remain calm. If anybody remembers who that guy is and why we ought to be listening to him, please let us know so that we can factor that in. But how about that? I think that's a great call and a great observation by Dan here in pointing out that, yeah, this is a stock phrase that he likes to use, and it may just have been inadvertently grafted onto the statement he planned to make by rote about North Korea without even giving a moment's thought to how it would change the interpretation and put us all in danger. We'll be right back. And we ought to be back. Thanks very much for hanging on through our 3-minute break. We're in our last stretch of the show for today, and it's hard to decide what's the most important thing to include. And we may have to, I may want to go back. Here's a promise I may yet break. To our podcast listeners, of course, the answer will be apparent by the time the podcast gets posted. But perhaps, I feel like I owe you another 10 minutes or so based on what we missed in the early part of the show. How we graft that on to a podcast, I'm not entirely sure, but maybe we can do that. And that's the way we can get to a couple more of these data points that are all obviously very important. I would guess that maybe the top item that we haven't yet discussed that absolutely needs to be added to the mix. I mean, I'll give you 1 second to pause and see if you can guess it on your own. Are you done? Did you guess? The Vice News report is the one I chose to grab on how Trump gets a folder full of positive news about himself twice a day. I bet you did. That's very good. We're down to the level of a children's program at this point, and that's how we're going to have to report on this idiot president that we've got. It's known as the propaganda document, apparently. We'll let Alex Thompson explain it as written, and I'm sure explode 2 or 3 times along the way. Twice a day since the beginning of the Trump administration. I know what's coming. My head is, I can't do it. A special folder is prepared for the president. The first document is prepared around 9:30 a.m., because why would they be done by 9 o'clock, right? Nobody's at work. I imagine he doesn't even come down from the residence, I'm sure, until about then. But okay, let me just go on. The first document is prepared at around 9:30 a.m. and the follow-up around 4:30 p.m. Because, again, he doesn't get to work early and he don't stay late. Former Chief of Staff Reince Priebus and the former Press Secretary Sean Spicer both wanted the privilege of delivering the 20 to 25 page packet to President Trump personally, the White House sources say. These sensitive papers, they're not, but he's sensitive to them, described to Vice News by 3 current and former White House officials. Gee, I wonder which White House officials might have some sort of grudge that might be willing to spill this information. Since both Reince Priebus and Sean Spicer are gone. Don't know that it's them. But anyway, 3 current and former White House officials said they don't contain top secret intelligence or updates on legislative initiatives. Instead, the folders are filled with screenshots of positive cable news chyrons. That is, those lower third headlines and crawls, the script that goes across the bottom on CNN. Admiring tweets, transcripts of fawning TV interviews, praise-filled news stories, and sometimes just pictures of Trump on TV looking powerful, which is a scream if you think about that. And Darth was on it right away, basically photoshopping up pictures of him dreaming of himself sitting in the fire trucks with his tiny hands, looking powerful. I mean, imagine that. A 20 to 25 page packet of positive news would otherwise be impossible to put together for Trump. But a tweet probably takes up an entire page. A picture of a screen grab saying nice things about Trump probably takes up an entire page. I wonder if that's how he came to discover the tweet by the Russian bot. What was it? Michelle or Nicole Mincy? Is that the name they attached to the bot we talked about yesterday? I wonder if that was in one of his packages. Probably. I think this package explains an awful lot. Anyway, continuing with the piece from Vice here, one White House official said the only feedback the White House communications shop, which prepares the folder, has ever gotten in all these months is it needs to be more effing positive. Which, I mean, how does it even get more positive? All it is positive news. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel. We'll even take a picture of Trump looking powerful on television, which is, of course, all he was ever interested in. But it needs to be more positive than that. They might, at this point, they should just make things up, honestly. And I'm not sure that they're not making things up. Those bots are doing it, and I bet you anything that bot's tweet made it into the folder. That's how he knew about it. What time did he tweet that thank you to Mincy? Time out. I have to do some research now and go back and find out. Did I archive that story about Mincy? Let's go back and see if I organized things correctly. Yeah, I did. Look, there it is. All right. On Saturday, President Trump tweeted his gratitude, right, to this bot. Let me go open the original and see what time the tweet was. I'm curious. Didn't they embed the tweet in here somewhere? They must have, right? Please tell me they did. It'll make my job that much easier. No. Really? Come on, Abby. You could have done that for us. It says Abby Phillips' piece. A very informative piece, no doubt. But let's see. Is there not? Wow. Okay. Well, so much for my instant sleuthing idea. On Sunday, Twitter suspended the account. Saturday, Trump. My guess is that, I guess it could have come in the Friday night package. But I don't know. It was either Friday night or Saturday morning package. And, well, that will tell us something. I'll track that down off the air, and maybe I can report to you in bonus recording for makeup time for today. Anyway, so think about that. On top of all this, they're the only thing they've ever heard back, not directly from Trump, although it would be interesting if Trump was the one who says it needs to be more effing positive. That may be Hope Hicks, although I don't know whether she resorts to that kind of salty language. My goodness. If not, how does she do it? The process of assembling the folder begins at the Republican National Committee's War Room. That's problematic all by itself, which has expanded from 4 to 10 people since the GOP won the White House. A war room, both parties have one regardless of who's in the White House, is often tasked with monitoring local and national news, cable television, social media, digital media, and print media to see how the party, its candidates, or their opponents are being perceived. And that part is true. I guess the questionable part is whether or not it's entirely above board for the RNC's War Room product to be delivered directly to the president twice a day, especially if it's such garbage like that. But okay. Anyway, beginning at 6 a.m. every weekday, the early start is a longtime War Room tradition. 3 staffers arrive at the RNC to begin monitoring the morning shows on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News as they scour the internet and newspapers. Every 30 minutes or so, the staffers send the White House Communications Office an email with chyron screenshots, tweets, news stories, and interview transcripts. The White House staffers then cull the information, send out clips to other officials, and push favorable headlines to a list of journalists. But they also pick out the most positive bits to give to the president. On days when there aren't enough positive chyrons, there's probably a lot of them, communication staffers will ask the RNC staffers for flattering photos of the president. Maybe it's good for the country that the president is in a good mood in the morning, one former RNC official said. Contacted by Vice News, Spicer disputed the nature of the folder. While I won't comment on materials we share with the president, this is not accurate on several levels, he said in an email. Asked what about the story was inaccurate, Spicer did not respond. I think we should take that to mean the story's accurate. Of course, every White House monitors media coverage to see how they're being covered, and the RNC may have decided more staff was needed after the party won the White House. As the political media environment has become faster moving and more frenzied, the efforts to follow it have also become more robust. The Obama White House usually had at least one very caffeinated point person and 2 others dedicated to watching Twitter, online publications, print media, and cable news, and then compile relevant clips and send them around to White House aides. But the production of a folder with just positive news and the use of the RNC to help produce it seemed abnormal to former White House officials. If we had prepared such a digest for Obama, I know that doesn't help, but still, you feel like compelled to say it. If we had prepared such a digest for Obama, he would have roared with laughter. Oh, of course, they would have been pilloried as well. Said David Axelrod, the senior advisor to Barack Obama during his first 2 years in the White House. His was a reality-based presidency. The RNC is always going to work to defend the White House, the administration, and its members of Congress, and our War Room's efforts help capture and drive how our team can echo that defense, said RNC spokeswoman Lindsey Jancic. That's kind of a non-response to the whole thing, but okay. Another current White House official said that the idea for the twice-daily ego boost came from Priebus and Spicer, who competed to deliver the folder and be the bearer of good news. Fat lot of good it did them. Priebus and Spicer weren't in a good position, and they wanted to show they could provide positive coverage, the official said. It was self-preservation. Yeah, probably more that than anything else. In the 2 plus weeks, there we are, getting the phrasing correct, following the departure of both Spicer and Priebus, White House officials say the document has been produced less frequently and more typically after public events, such as Trump's recent speech at the National Boy Scouts Jamboree in West Virginia, when it was probably empty. It's unclear what will change, if anything, once a new White House communications director is appointed to replace the briefly tenured Anthony Scaramucci. It's not the first recorded instance of Trump welcoming excessive flattery. Of Of course not. He frequently cites or thanks cable television hosts like Sean Hannity, Lou Dobbs, and the hosts of Fox and Friends who cover his presidency more favorably. One such tweet included here from July 23rd, thanking Lou Dobbs, among others. And at a broadcasted cabinet meeting in June, oh, you remember this? Wow, yeah, that's right. I had forgotten about that one. Trump listened contentedly as the vice president, his chief of staff, and nearly all of the 15 cabinet secretaries heaped praise on him. Remember, they went around the table. Everybody say something nice about President Trump and how you're praying for him because he's such a glorious leader. Priebus took that opportunity, of course, to tell Trump, on behalf of the entire senior staff around you, Mr. President, or at least briefly, we thank you for the opportunity, brief though it may be, and the blessing that you've given us to serve your agenda for now and the American people. Yeah, I do remember that one. I'm glad that that came up again. But, I mean, bizarre story. And potentially troublesome, legally speaking, to have the RNC preparing such a thing. But what I mean, I guess it's not surprising, and it does explain a lot. And I would be very curious to know whether the Nicole Mincy tweet either made that roundup or whether it was specially forwarded in some way to Trump for his attention, or whether he just happened to find it. I mean, I don't think I doubt very much whether he even looks at responses to his tweets anywhere. Probably, almost certainly not on his phone. I don't know what kind of Twitter client he uses on his phone. Some make it easier than others to look at, or if your preference is to ignore them, all the responses that your tweets garner. But I imagine the volume is too large to monitor meaningfully anyway, and I would guess is probably about 75% negative anyway, so he just stays away from it, which leaves me with the question of how does this particular tweet get through to him, and does the person who brings it forward have any idea that it might be a bot? I'd be somewhat curious about that one too. It also explains one of last night's minor Twitter storms that included profuse praise from Stephen Miller. Not that we didn't expect that praise from Stephen Miller, but I mean, it was so obsequious that it was even over the top for him. And I think the reality is that at that point, he must have known about this document, but if by any chance he just found out about it by reading about it in the news, which is possible, he just might not have been spending his time on such a thing. It may be that he was just hoping to make the roundup. I did see it reported I think I grabbed this one from Tegan Goddard, but lots of people were passing this one around once Stephen Miller was reported to have said by, I think, Fox News's Twitter account, that Miller had said, Trump's the most gifted politician of our time, and he's the best orator in generations, which is so obviously ridiculous that he was clearly aiming that statement at Trump in the hopes, I guess, of actually securing the communications director job, since that's rumored to be in the offing for him. And he likely thought it would be included in the roundup. And I wondered, I mean, Trump loves praise and everything, but does he discount it when it's attributed to a staffer like that? I mean, he certainly appreciates it, and he'll favor you over somebody that doesn't offer it. But I wonder whether he discounts it at all in his head. Like, well, I pay these guys to say this stuff, and it's not like a random person who I don't have in my employ saying something like this. I'd rather hear more about that. And that may be how the bot stuff made it in there. All right. Well, it's time for me to check the Twitter comments, because I see Kate Sherrill's got one in there with like 5-6 exclamation points. So we better check this one out. And it looks promising. Certainly, I think the exclamation points are warranted here. The tweet, let's call it up so we can properly credit everything here and trace the path if necessary, if we need to dig any deeper. Brooke Ann Lawrence is the tweeter in this case. And, well, it's not going to let me, you're not going to let me like take a look at the profile here. Publicist at Washington Post. Okay, very interesting. What have you got to say? The tweet says, this is new. FBI conducted a pre-dawn raid of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort's home. That does sound like a major development. Let's open that one up in the Washington Post and read more about it. I don't know whether we're able to tell exactly what they grabbed out of there and what it means. Let's see. Carol Leonig and Tom Hamburger, also Rosalind Helderman on this piece. So top names at the Post on this beat. FBI agents raided the Alexandria home of President Trump's former campaign chairman last month. That would be right here in Virginia. And right where that grand jury is meeting, too, interestingly enough. Using a search warrant to seize documents and other materials, according to people familiar with the special counsel investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Federal agents appeared at Paul Manafort's home without advance warning, yowza, in the pre-dawn hours of July 26th, the day after he met voluntarily with the staff of the Senate Intelligence Committee. The search warrant was wide-ranging, and FBI agents working with special counsel Robert Mueller departed the home with various records. Jason Maloney, a spokesman for Manafort. Remember, you're a melon. Jason Maloney. It's M-A-L-O-N-I, not Meloni, but okay. We'll take it. Any movie reference opportunity, we'll take it. And his name's Jason, too. A spokesman for Manafort confirmed that agents executed a warrant at one of the political consultant's homes. He's got many, including one in Trump Tower, right? And that Manafort cooperated with the search. That is to say, he didn't draw a weapon on them. The raid came as Manafort has been voluntarily producing documents to congressional committees investigating Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. The search warrant indicates investigators may have argued to a federal judge that they had reason to believe Manafort could not be trusted to turn over all records in response to a grand jury subpoena. I wouldn't trust him. It could also have been intended to send a message to President Trump's former campaign chairman that he should not expect gentle treatment or legal courtesies from Mueller's team. The documents included materials Manafort has already provided to Congress and said people familiar with the search. If the FBI wanted the documents, they could have just asked, and he would have turned them over, said one advisor close to the White House. Maybe. Josh Stuve, spokesman for Mueller, declined to comment, as did Reginald Brown, an attorney for Manafort. Hope I got Josh's name right there. Mr. Manafort has consistently cooperated with law enforcement and other serious inquiries and did so on this occasion as well, said Maloney, the spokesman for Manafort. Is that right? Did we get the identity? Do I remember the identification of Maloney wrong? Yeah, I guess I do. All right. Well, anyway. So he's Manafort's guy. The search came as Mueller has increased legal pressure on Manafort, consolidating under his authority a series of unrelated investigations, says you, into various aspects of Manafort's professional and personal life. Nothing's unrelated. Manafort's allies fear that Mueller hopes to build a case against Manafort unrelated to the 2016 campaign, in hopes that the former campaign operative would provide information against others in Trump's inner circle in exchange for lessening his own legal exposure. The significance of the records seized from Manafort's apartment is unclear. Manafort has provided documents to both the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate and House Intelligence Committees. The documents are said to include notes Manafort took while attending a meeting with Donald Trump Jr. and a Russian lawyer at Trump Tower in June 2016. We know all about that one. Emails show Trump Jr. took the meeting and invited Manafort after he was promised the lawyer would deliver damaging information about Hillary Clinton as part of a Russian government effort to assist his father's campaign. That's the end of the story, which means that's just flatly stated as true, and I can't argue with that. That's a good closing. Let's see. What other things might we need to check in on from today's comments before we part ways here? Michael Musson says it's unlikely that Trump knows that Guam is U.S. territory. That's very unlikely. True. But someone has likely told him by now. I don't know if he cares, but there it is. Kate Sherrill also noting that McCain is breaking with Trump over this threat to North Korea, saying it's not helpful, and noting that this is the guy who sang Bomb Iran. Remember when he sang it to Barbara Ann back in the day when he was campaigning? Yeah. All right, let's see. Let's see. What have we got here? Oh, let's see. Karen D, very upset about something, and I think I missed the initial comment on this, though I'm betting it has to do with the single-payer healthcare issue, and I think we're likely right there. How much further would I have to scroll down to? Yeah, I think this is just sort of the reaction to a different one here. Let's see. I'm not, let's see. Oh, no, okay. It's, I guess that's the sound that she was getting. I guess we were having audio problems. Okay, well, that's, at least we haven't lost you on substance, Karen. That's the good news. All right, let's see. I guess, I must have opened up the Clutch Cargo cult tweet from Radio Justice here. Good old Justice Putnam on Twitter. That's how you can find him. And that must have been the case. Okay, well, at least we haven't lost her on substance, as I said. A few more things here we've got time to chew over before handing the microphones over to the after show guys, who I hope are ready and raring to go today. Today, by the way, being the Wednesday, the day before, or now I think there's actually events Wednesday nights down at Netroots Nation, so it's getting real exciting down there. As predicted, we were unable to bring you Joan McCarter, and of course we'll be traveling for the next 2 Wednesdays, so it's going to be an awful long time till we can hear from Joan again. We'll see what we can engineer up to make up for that shortfall when we get back in place. And when we get back in place for live shows in the middle of the week following next, the kids will be back in school. So a little bit of that regularity comes back to the show, and I think we'll resume our non-summer focus. We do tend to lose focus on things during the summer, but that's only natural. Okay, so what else do we need to make sure you are aware of in terms of data points this morning before we head off into the sunset live show-wise? Gosh, there are a million different things, including, let's see, trying to figure out what will be the most important one to throw into the mix here now that we've got the 2 folders of positive news. Let's go with this one over here. Sebastian Gorka has managed to find a way back into the news for himself. We haven't mentioned it either, and so we've been rather remiss in this, but we, of course, are not President of the United States. This story begins with the failure of the White House to make any note whatsoever of the bombing attack against a mosque in Bloomington, Minnesota. The piece begins this way. In the early morning hours of August 5th, someone hurled an improvised explosive device at a mosque in Bloomington, Minnesota. None of the roughly 20 early morning worshipers were injured, thankfully, but the blast broke windows and began a small fire, filling the building with smoke. The mosque's executive director told a local TV station that one of our congregation members came out immediately and saw a truck fleeing from the parking lot, running at very high speed. The FBI is investigating. No arrests have been made. On Sunday, Minnesota Governor Mark Dayton called the attack an act of terrorism. This all summarized for us by Benjamin Hart, writing at New York Magazine. But here's the nut of it. The response from the Trump administration has been predictable yet disturbing. Almost complete silence. Now, we were no better on that, but of course we have a limited platform here, and again, we're not the president. President Trump has not issued a statement or tweeted about the Minnesota attack, preferring to direct his attention to other pressing matters like Senator Richard Blumenthal's Vietnam record. And of course, I did note that he made mention of, by retweeting Fox News, an attack that happened in France because it fit his narrative. The rest of the attacks, apparently, not so much. Now, the White House silence, if you include all of the staff in this, has been broken, but not in the way you might have, or maybe it is the way you would have expected. In a Tuesday appearance on MSNBC, Nazi-ish quasi-White House advisor Sebastian Gorka, who is a full-blown Nazi, by the way, put forth a bizarre justification for the radio silence. The attack, you see, may have been perpetrated by the left. There's a great rule. All initial reports are false, Gorka said. Editor's note, this is a terrible rule. I have a similar rule, though. All initial statements from the White House are false, and I get proved right more often than they do. Gorka says you have to check them. You have to find out who the perpetrators are. We've had a series of crimes committed, alleged hate crimes by right-wing individuals in the last 6 months that turned out to actually have been propagated by the left. So let's wait and see. Let's allow the local authorities to provide their assessments, and then the White House will make its comments. Now, that's terrible, but I have to note that this is similar to something that they pulled out when the targets were the Jewish community centers, the JCC Jewish community centers around the country that were getting bomb threats. And it was ludicrous sounding then, but later on they did actually end up arresting somebody for it, and the person was allegedly easier to connect to the left than to the right, which is kind of an odd thing. Although it was disturbing, it actually immediately put me in mind. I was thinking, how did they manage to quote unquote guess that this would be the case? And it made me so suspicious. I began wondering whether they might in fact be actors employed on the right to impersonate people on the left, setting up supposed false flag operations initially supposed to be pinned on the right, but then be revealed to be on the left. But what if it's around? What if it's topsy-turvy world? There is more news on that front, and I don't have the opportunity to share it with you in full, but I'll share it in the roundup. Let's just throw this out there. It turns out that the JCC bomb threat suspects, or at least one of them, was in the business of selling the technology and the ability to level those threats at $30 a pop. I'll include that piece from The Atlantic, and we'll see if we can make heads or tails out of it in the days to come. It's just a little bit weird that they would bring this false flag thing up again, and if it bears itself out, to see Sebastian Gorka and the right wing and the White House be right twice about something like this is awfully suspicious to me. Let's see what we can cull out of it and hand it over to Robert Mueller and see what he makes of it. Anyway, time to hand things over to the guys getting ready to bring you the after show here on Netroots Radio. Coming up next, Texas Republicans want to force women to purchase rape insurance to cover abortions. Generic drug prices are falling, but consumers are not benefiting. And even though Republicans control both houses of Congress as well as the White House, a clean debt ceiling bill is unlikely to pass the House.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
We'll try to be on hand to explain to you what that debt ceiling bill is all about and how it's clean and how it might not be clean in the days to come. In the meantime, on the last half, they'll be talking to Angela Marks, a.k.a. Angie in Washington State, from Twitter, for a political and world news roundup that is the epitome of fire and fury the world has never seen before. Coming next.